Let us now talk to Tim Montgomerie, who is, of course, a former number 10 advisor and founder of Conservative Home as well. Tim, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Very
I
good.
was going to have the rest of the day off, though. Now I'm feeling guilty at your.
Well, listen, I want you out there. I want you out there, either earning money or spending money. One of the two things, in order to.
Oh, I could do spending.
Okay, spending. I'll let you off with, but you've got to be out doing something. I don't buy all these people who are saying, "Oh, you know, we can't afford to do anything, so we're just going to stay in bed." Go out and do some work if you haven't got enough money. That's what normal people do, isn't it? For heaven's sake.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, you know, Nadine Dorries is soon to join the ranks of the unemployed, I suppose. But you have looked at what she said, and you've decided that you agree with her, I think, haven't you?
Well, look, I should declare, Mike, I'm a good friend of Nadine, so I should declare that first of all.
I think Nadine is a very fine woman. I actually suggested, when I saw the way that she dealt with that idiot Barwell over the weekend, that she should just be crowned the Queen of the Tory party.
Yeah. No, I understand that. No, but some of the stuff, Mike, that partly why I got in contact with you yesterday evening, as you know, to talk to you today, was this venom that I have sort of heard from Conservative MPs and others about her privately, you know, yesterday in response to the letter that she published in the Mail on Sunday. Just really was off the scale. And you can criticise Nadine for some of the things that she said, but one thing that I'll say for her is that she does what she does publicly. You know, she says, you know, face to face, if she's got something to say, you know, it goes from her, you know, her heart and her head, you know, to a public domain very quickly. And my worry is not only the nastiness, and a lot of it quite misogynistic actually towards her, that's being spewed privately behind the scenes, is actually also not only discourteous and pretty unedifying and a sign of how toxic the culture inside the Conservative Party has become. I think it's also partly an excuse not to address what she actually said in her letter. What she said in her letter was something we've discussed often enough on your programme. The Conservative Party isn't very conservative. It's putting up taxes. It's not doing anything about immigration. It's not, you know, not cracking down on crime. Except for these, you know, ridiculous announcements like today that we're finally going to get a police service that can investigate. Yeah, but
again, I mean, that is the sort of the MO now, isn't it, of the government? They make an announcement, but they don't actually do anything. You know, we've had several announcements. We've been told that they're going to go after every burglar. We've been told that they're going to investigate every theft now. We've been told that they're going to stop the boats. You know, they keep making these grand announcements, and then nothing happens.
And I think, you know, with every, I don't know what the half-life of all of these announcements is, but it's not very long because people aren't stupid. You know, they had these sort of, you know, eye-catching initiatives. Was that the expression that Tony Blair used once for, you know, catching people's attention? Well, you know, maybe they were tricked at the time, but that was, what, 20, 25 years ago now. The idea that an announcement that's made and is splashed all across the newspapers about cracking down on crime is going to lead anyone in the country to think, oh, good, the government's finally got on top of crime, is for the birds. People want serious, thought-out, you know, policies. Right. They want consistent approaches. And I'm afraid the approach that Rishi Sunak has taken, with a few pledges that he announces, you know, last year, but hasn't really seen through. There haven't been, for example, the really tough action that you'd need to stop the crossings across the Channel. And that is what Nadine Dorries is, in essence, pointing out, is that the manifesto upon which this Conservative government was elected in 2019, it won a handsome majority. It still has a big majority in Parliament. But as Nadine Dorries' letter says, the Parliament is a zombie Parliament. It isn't passing legislation. It isn't doing anything to actually fundamentally tackle the problems that this country faces. Where I disagree with Nadine is that all of this started under Rishi Sunak and everything was going well under Boris Johnson. The drift was also already well established under both Boris Johnson and Liz Truss. But Rishi Sunak isn't doing anything substantial to change all of that.
She made a very interesting point as well about the number of prime ministers that there have been and who have all been removed effectively without any kind of electoral process.
Yeah, and I think that you can do that once or twice. I think that it was an advantage of the British system. You know, the Americans are stuck with Joe Biden, even though he's deteriorating before our eyes. We were able to get rid of Liz Truss very quickly. when it was clear she was absolutely unfit to be Prime Minister. That's a good thing. But when it repeatedly happens that we get rid of prime ministers, sometimes for good reasons, sometimes for less good reasons, I think the connection, even though we don't have a presidential system, the connection between how people vote and what they get breaks down, and then people feel cheated. So, yeah, there's something true in what Nadine wrote there as well.
Yes, I think so. One of the criticisms that she did face was that she hadn't really been working properly as a constituency MP. She was on TalkTV yesterday. Let's see what she said about that.
I love my constituency and my former constituency and constituents. And, you know what it's like, Nick, because you've been an MP. I've got a team of 4 caseworkers who've been working very hard over the summer, as have I. And that's where most of the work actually takes place. And to be criticised for not being in Parliament when it has been an absolute zombie Parliament for the last 12 months, I just felt was a bit rich. And a point I've also made is, I don't know what Rishi Sunak is doing, because it didn't have to be this way. He's now put the party in the position of having to fight yet another by-election. Why? Why would any Prime Minister...
Why, indeed. I think she made a very good case for herself, and I think clearly she's miffed about not being elevated to the House of Lords and is worried that somebody's actually kiboshed that altogether. And I think there is something to what she says as well, Tim, that she's kind of looked down upon by some members of the Tory party. She's seen as a working-class woman. She's seen as not one of us. She's seen as not clubbable. All of those things that the Tory party used to be accused of, but we all sort of hoped perhaps had gone away.
Yeah, and there are plenty of people who are very snooty about how she talks and how she communicates. Yeah. And sometimes, I'm a friend of hers. I love her to bits, but she embarrasses me sometimes. She sometimes says things that I wish she wouldn't. But ultimately, unlike so many politicians who basically people hear and they think they don't believe a word of what they've just said. They all talk the same, manufactured sound bites that are given to them by a 20-something special advisor. Nadine Dorries speaks the truth, and sometimes you will disagree with it, but at least you're getting what she believes and what she's about. And my goodness, our politics needs more of that.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I got to meet her over the sort of course of this year because she was doing a show for TalkTV, and I found her to be straight talking. You didn't always, she could be quite short with people, but, I liked her, I must say. I mean, she's very much, for me, an unusual politician, as you say, who just says it as she sees it. She's not sort of, pussyfooting around any issues. And I wonder whether, the world will be a less good place, particularly inside the House of Commons, without her.
Well, you can't have too many Nadine Dorrises in Parliament. If you have all the sort of truth tellers in that sense, and people who shoot from the hip, perhaps not a great deal of stuff would get done. You need a balance of people. And what I'm perhaps just most concerned at is that at the heart of this letter about the drift of the Conservative Party from its core values, there is a truth that she is telling. And I've just heard and seen too many Conservatives, publicly and privately, in senior positions who should know better, basically shooting at Nadine Dorries in the last 24 hours and ignoring her key message is that the Conservative Party isn't being conservative. And until that changes, I'm afraid all of the criticisms that Nadine Dorries are going to continue to be relevant.
Yeah, which leads us on to, I suppose, just finally, Tim, the infighting that's going on, the sectionalisation of the Tory party, the kind of the cliquiness of it all, which always gets worse around election time, doesn't it? Polls are showing that Labour is now on track for a landslide victory, similar to 1997 when Blair got in. What are you hearing from inside the party? What are you seeing out there on the stump, as it were? Is it going to be a landslide, or could it be just a sort of minority government situation?
I've learned in British politics, Mike, not to make too many predictions. If you put a gun to my head, I'd be very pessimistic at the moment. Yeah. And I think the gossip at the moment is just about the reshuffle that hasn't happened. Right. At the start of the summer, we were expecting a Conservative reshuffle, with Ben Wallace, the Defence Secretary, already announcing that he was stepping down. There was an expectation that we were going to get some big beasts moved into some of the big jobs to show that Rishi Sunak was serious about tackling some of the problems. But what has happened, I think, is he's dithered throughout the summer. and he's worried about upsetting members of, the Conservative Parliamentary Party, even though he still has a majority of 60 or 70 in Parliament. And that, I think, is the fundamental problem. That is what's really getting Tory MPs worried, is Rishi Sunak still seems frightened of his own shadow. Make some bold decisions, change your cabinet, change the direction of this government in a few areas. Show the British people that you believe in something, that you have a destination in mind, that you have a mission. And I think his failure to do that is causing a lot of the anxiety inside Tory ranks.
It's true. He's governing as though he has no majority at all. Theresa May was more decisive than him.
Yeah. Well, my goodness, that's a damning.
I know. We'll have to talk about her another time because we're out of time. But listen, thank you. Great to talk to you. Tim Montgomerie there with his view on the state of the Tory party, the state of the government, and Rishi Sunak, of course, as well. Tim is a former number 10 advisor, so he knows what it's like from the inside. And he's worried that Rishi Sunak just hasn't got it.